Come with me, Jake Turner, as I travel the back roads talking with your neighbors and crop experts about best practices in weed control in soybeans. All you need is a minute, an Authority Minute. On this episode of Authority Minute, we travel to Indianapolis, Indiana to talk with a panel of weed experts to answer questions you asked at authorityminute.com. You know, we'll check out any source to get you the answers to best practices in weed management. Well, maybe we'll try something else. Well, this is the all-star team of weed experts we've assembled to answer your viewer questions. Our viewers asked some great questions, so let's get started. Right off the bat, we've got Ginger from Cook, Nebraska. And Ginger actually has asked a number of questions. She's a regular Authority Minute viewer, but here's her main one. How long has Authority Herbicide been out there? And are we still in the testing phase with the product?
Today we have actually 5 brands in the market. We never really stopped testing Authority or trying to provide brands that bring real value to the grower, but it is a tried and true chemistry, and it's been around in the market for about 10 years.
Paul from Hankinson, North Dakota wants to know, does Authority need to be incorporated?
Authority is very good on the small seeded broadleafs, which germinate very, very shallow. So we want to see the Authority placed in that shallow weed zone. So whether we go with a pre-emerge, pre-plant application, or we go incorporate it and want to work it very, very shallow, not bury it. So we are putting all that herbicide in that top inch where those weeds are germinating. That's going to give us the best control.
Well, talking about shallow weeds, this one actually goes for you, Dean, because when we were at Iowa State, we talked about the Waterhemp dragon. Judd from Franklin, Illinois, says that because Waterhemp is a shallow germinating seed, what is its viability? How long is it viable if a grower is using plowing to bury it under?
That's such a great question.
So, you didn't think the salad was good enough at the restaurant?
I just had to bring more. And Jake, how many plants did we have to harvest to get this much seed?
See, I know the answer now. It's 1.
It's 1. And how many seeds did that 1 produce?
1 million seeds. We got 1 million seeds right here. So I'll still take the salad.
As I would too, Jake. So as we look forward, and the question's exactly right, there's many things we need to do to manage pressures from water hemp. 1 plant produces 1 million seeds. You know, how do we make the best decisions to control that? Does deep tillage help with a shallow germinating seed? Absolutely. Basically 24 months, 70% of it's not viable anymore anyway. How do I help it be less viable? Bury it.
Yeah, I mean, anything we can do to help prevent either germination or destroy some of that weed seed is going to help us in the long run. So one of the tactics you can use is deep tillage. Now, there's a ton of benefits that we've recognized over the last couple of decades with minimum tillage and no-till. So we don't want to disregard all of those benefits that we see just for the sake of trying to destroy weed seed. But if we're into a situation where we have the opportunity to maybe bury some of this weed seed deep, we're going to see a benefit from that because we're going to have less weed seed germinating from those deep depths. So we got to kind of take it into account that it's part of an entire weed management program.
Talking about weed control on a broader spectrum, Chris, after you and I talked, a lot of folks were asking, with resistant weeds, if they don't use a pre, what time frame do they actually have to get control of those weeds before they overrun their field? And you know, you've shown me personally a pretty interesting way of demonstrating that. Would you mind demonstrating it for the rest of us?
You bet, you bet. Does anybody have like a buck or something like that? Oh, hey, Dean.
I'd be able to help out with that.
Thank you, Dean.
Yeah.
You know what? Holy moly, I'll take that 100.
You don't want the
No,
20?
just the 100.
Oh,
100
just the 100.
Yeah,
okay.
It's always,
nice.
you know, the bigger the bill, the better. So what I always do is that in presentations and just in communicating with growers is, you know, the size of the weed really is going to have impact on yield. And so when you get past 4 inches tall, you're getting a reduction in yield. And so when you look at this right here, and this right here is roughly, it's a little over 2 inches, and saying that, you know, when the weed is hitting 2 inches, you know, you're going to have an issue, and it's going to be soon. And so when you're looking at water hemp or Palmer amaranth, they can grow 2 inches in a day. So, you know, the next day they can be this size. And so the one thing about that is that, you know, you're missing the opportunity. And so when I say missing the opportunity, thank you, Dean, by the way, that was nice. The thing about that is that it shows the value of a residual pre. And that is that when you use a full rate of a residual pre, then that is the initial line of defense for your Palmer Amaranth and your Waterhemp. If you have a situation later on where, you know, those products, the residual pre products, you know, later in the season are going to, you know, ultimately not control, you know, you're going to be seeing some weeds and so on and so forth. You need to understand where those weeds are at, and you need to be able to take care of them. But again, the one thing I will say is that the residual pre is the first line of defense, and I don't think that any grower can afford to not use a residual pre.
Talking about how it costs you money to not control resistant weeds, we have Rick from Tulare, South Dakota, and he wants to know your recommendation for Kochia. And Gail, you've been dealing with Kochia a little bit lately, right?
Well, Kochia is a little bit like Waterhemp and that Palmer in that repeated applications of glyphosate and different herbicides over the years have caused a resistant biotype to develop there as well. And so there again, we need to use residual herbicides as our first line of defense, and the Authority herbicides are particularly effective on Kochia. It's one of the weeds that's very sensitive to the active ingredients in Authority. So Authority pre-emergence prior to when that Kochia is going to emerge, which Kochia emerges very early in the spring, so we've got to be very proactive and get ahead of it. And so if we get that on pre-emergence, keep those weeds from coming up, we're going to do an excellent job providing season-long control. As long as we're using a full rate of an Authority product down, we should be in good shape on Kochia.
One of our viewers asked a question, Randy from Neely, Nebraska. Will Authority work in a program with non-GMO beans?
It's almost, in my mind, essential to have a pre-emerge product like Authority and non-GMO, because you've lost that glyphosate or glufosinate that you can apply. That's done a very, very good job. And so if you don't have the arsenal post-emerge, pre-emerge is even more important. So Authority products, full rates, are super critical to give us that good control. One nice thing is FMC is keep developing new products for the growers. We've just introduced a new product called Marvel that is a post-emerge product that also does a very, very good job on Waterhemp, Lamb's Quarter, Nightshades, Morning Glories, Velvet Leaf, and so it's an excellent program.
We actually just launched a product this year called Authority Elite. We don't have a lot of it out in the marketplace, but we've got a few 100,000 acres that we're looking forward to everybody getting a look at. And this product is really designed more for the really heavy amaranthus pressure acres. We see a lot of it going into the lower and mid-Mississippi Valley, but we also think we're a little bit, maybe a year or two ahead of the game here. We're trying to anticipate what these needs might be downstream. We've developed a product that gets outstanding grass control as well as the broadleaf control that you've come to expect with Authority.
What are the strengths of Authority Elite in particular?
With this product, it's going to be, you know, a dual mode of action product for those small-seeded broadleaves, but it's going to bring outstanding grass control as well. And so many areas growers are looking at, you know, not only the broadleaves but the grass side of things. It's going to offer some great flexibility from a rotation standpoint. You know, in some areas, growers are growing different crops, might want to stay away from a chemistry that's got ALS in it, and this chemistry or this product would fit those acres where maybe they want to concerned about rotating to seed corn or to alfalfa or to sunflowers or to sorghum or something like that, where they need a little more product that's a little more flexible.
When we were at the National Farm Machinery Show, we talked about Roundup Ready Extend crop system. When's this new product's timeline coming out?
We're anticipating the launch of Roundup Ready Extend crop system for 2014.
When you bring out this new technology, I understand growers are anticipating this and going to be very excited about this, but we've been talking around the table here about the tremendous benefits of residual herbicides. And I can imagine that they're going to provide a tremendous benefit in that Roundup Ready Extend cropping system as well. Can you kind of elaborate on how you see that fitting into that system?
Yeah, that was a good question. And we are recommending a full rate of a residual pre with the Roundup Ready Extend cropping system.
Last year was a lot hotter and drier than is necessarily the best for our residual pre's to work their best. There wasn't an optimal condition. So a lot of farmers are asking, should they do this year? Is it worth it?
Well, even though 2012 was so hot and dry, we had a difficult time keeping pre-emergence herbicides activated, so we got the full activity. we still saw a tremendous benefit from those. You know, normally in most cases we might see 95, 98, 99% control, and last year we were probably in the 80s, 85 in a lot of these cases. So if you think about it from that standpoint, that's still 80% of the weeds that we're suppressing or taking out of that population. And as we got hotter and drier later in the season, many of the post-emergence herbicides were also struggling to control those weeds. So imagine if we had 80 or 90% more weeds out there that we were trying to control that time of the year, we would have had a lot more escapes. So looking at it from a monetary standpoint, that is still a tremendous investment that you can put into that crop, because that early season weed competition is so critical in maintaining that yield benefit or that maximum yield opportunity that you're going to see out of that crop. So even though you might see a few more escapes middle of the season that you've got to control in a drier environment, we're still going to see a tremendous benefit from that.
Actually, Chris, you and I were talking about that on the way over too. I thought you had an interesting opinion or take on that. You want to share that with everybody?
Yeah. When you look at the situation with the residual pre, you're seeing the value of it. Last year, just because of the hot and dry conditions, there were some issues. But the thing about it is that when we look at this from a 401k standpoint, there are years that my 401k doesn't do well. I don't punt. I leave it in there. The next year, it's going to perform. It's one of those things where I wish that that all of my stocks and my mutual funds, were all doing wonderful year in and year out. But that's not the case. And so I totally agree with what you're saying, Gail. Is that it provides tremendous value. Continue to do it because it is your most important line of defense for controlling Palmer amaranth and Waterhemp.
Right. And as we look at weed control in general, it's not just a one-year thing that we're trying to do. We're looking at farming here, and normally in a farmer's career, he's looking at 40 years to get it right. And so you got to look at this a year in year out, and look as towards you're trying to build to success. And so that residual herbicide that first year is just building upon what we're trying to do down the road. We're trying to reduce the seed bank. We're trying to maintain a low population out there. So we need to use those residual herbicides year in, year out to get the best weed control we can. We should always strive for 100% weed control. We probably can't always expect it, but we should always keep striving towards getting better every year, and residual herbicides are a key and integral part of that.
I talked with Richard Brock, and we were talking about inputs and commodities. And some growers asked me afterwards, if the price on soybeans falls, does it still make sense to invest in a pre-herbicide? What's the take?
As commodity prices go down, and you've got all of your inputs into that field, whether it's fuel, labor, irrigation, seed, your inputs there are already committed. So now it's up to you to maximize the net return you get off of that acre. And what is the one variable you can use there to get the maximum net return? It's yield. And so you need to protect that yield and keep the maximum return into that. And that is so critical by controlling weeds early in the season. That's where a residual herbicide is going to pay for you. So as commodity prices go down, residuals become even more important.
So, guys, you've given a great amount of information here. We really appreciate it. But that's pretty much the question a lot of our viewers have after every episode is, where can I go to get more information and specific recommendations for my area? Because what works in North Dakota may not be the same in Kentucky. So what's your recommendations?
I'd say the first and best place to go is really to go to fmccrop.com.
fmccrop.com?
fmccrop.com. And there's a lot more information there that can dig deeper into the features and benefits of the specific authority brands and all the things that we've been talking about today. Also, as a side note, I highly encourage growers to read labels. Our labels are on there, or they can also go to cdms.net and pull labels down. But another great resource, and I think I mentioned earlier, is your local retailer, your local FMC Star retailer. We make a lot of efforts to make sure that they're trained on our brands to be able to help growers make the right decisions. And you can also go to fmccrop.com and you can get information for guys like Gail and Brent and myself, Dean, and you can find our contact information on there and drop us an email or give us a call.
So we've come to our last question, guys, and I'm going to answer this one.
Right.
It's one I know the answer to. So Tracy from Little Rock, Arkansas wants a request, and that is more results in the field videos. Well, I can tell you that Authority Minute will be going out in the field more this spring and this summer. We'll be doing side-by-side comparisons, weed identification. We'll be doing pest identification, scouting, pest control. We'll be doing all kinds of work from the field, so you get your wish, Tracy. And I got my wish. I got a great team of experts here. Thank you so much, Chris, Matt,
Jake.
Brent,
Thank you.
Gail,
You bet.
and Dean.
Dragon,
Dragon
Slayer.
Slayer.
The Dragon Slayer.
Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it.
You bet.
You bet.
Thanks, Jake.
Thank you.
Well, our panel of weed management experts had answers to all your questions, but let's try this one more time to see if it can answer mine. Will Authority Minute ever shoot a video in Hawaii on weed management? My sources say no. Well, I got one right. Keep on asking your questions, though, and we'll keep on coming up with much more credible sources for the answers. Come on back to authorityminute.com to check out all the episodes. Leave your questions and comments. It only takes a minute. An Authority Minute.